Hi guys, my name's Johnny. I make music under the name of T3TRA. This is my first tutorial about how to use Ableton to help with songwriting. The reason to use Ableton over other DAWs, most people will use the DAW that they've learnt on because of workflow reasons. Ableton's pretty much the same as other DAWs, it has all the same features really, except for one thing which is slightly different, which is session view. It looks a bit like a mixer and it does work like one, but it also has this clip launcher which allows you to sort of layer different things and audition them in different orders and use it that way, which I'll show shortly. The reason I'd use this method is if I have really no ideas or I've got a day spare where I can spend it recording or making music, and I don't really have the time to sit around waiting for inspiration to strike, so I find it best just to sit down and start writing things, and that's when I'd use this approach. So the first thing I do is just select a key or a mode, one I'm comfortable writing in, one that I know quite well. I'll probably just write out the scale so I've got it to hand. One thing I should explain is that I'm not necessarily going to use these sounds that I make now, they're just to sort of write the song with. I don't want to spend too long sort of messing around with patches or dialing in different tones. I just use things that I've already made or have used before. That are just going to give me a sort of ballpark for what I want to use in the future. So the first thing I would use is usually a pad. For this I'm using Massive, and it's just a simple pad that I've made before. It's not got a lot going on, and all I programmed in is just a simple A sharp minor chord with an added 6th, I think. I should say for this song I chose A sharp minor. So I can launch that from here just by pressing this play button here. Okay. The next thing I'll probably do is drums, try and get a rhythm. For that I'm using Superior Drummer. It's just a map I've sort of made myself and used quite a few times. So together they sound a bit like that. Okay, so when I have the pad and the drums, a little rhythm that I'm quite happy with, I'll then start messing around the guitar, seeing what I can come up with. Again, not trying to do anything sort of groundbreaking, just trying to get things moving forward. So that's this. Not exactly Mozart, but there you go. That looks a little bit different because that's actually a group of 2 channels, which is just guitar left and right, just to flesh it out a little bit more. When the guitar's done, I can add in the bass. Okay. The next thing I tend to do is a clean guitar, or in this case 2 clean guitars playing different things, and just play them on their own. Again, not exactly groundbreaking, but together it'll at least get me started. The last part, I tend to make a decision when I'm going to have like a delayed guitar or maybe like a synth kind of thing. In this instance, I decided for a synth lead, which is just this part. And that's just a massive patch I just threw together really quickly. So if I unmute everything, the part as it stands sounds a bit like this. To show is how I audition those parts. Now this will become more apparent when there's more song, but for now it's just one part. I can essentially just launch these things and see how they sound in different combinations. So I could try something like this. So you can see how you can bring parts in and out, a bit like a breakdown that you do in dance music, where you bring the parts in one by one, or you can try different combinations and see how it sounds. You don't have to use everything all together, sort of a full dynamics. You can really sort of stretch a part out or bring in different ideas and see how that sounds. Okay, so what I do next is basically block out the song. Each of these vertical lines is called a scene, and I'd probably do about 8 of those normally for about 7 to 8 instruments, but for this I've just done 3 just to show. So the first one is what we already had. The second is this. When I'm happy that I've blocked out the song and I've got plenty of parts to fill out, it's a piece of equipment that you don't necessarily need. It's not strictly necessary, it just helps. You can just do everything with what you've got on the desktop here, but it's this APC40, which I'll try and show on the camera without breaking everything. And you should be able to see that the pads here correspond to what's on the screen here. So if I change this one to yellow, you should be able to see that that one has changed to yellow, and I can launch the clip just by pressing it. Okay, so the way I'd use that is kind of like playing the song like a bit of an instrument, trying the different parts out, seeing what fits with other parts from the song that I've written. And if you press record up here, whatever you do is saved to the song, so you can come up with a structure like that. So for example, I could try something like this. And if you stop recording, it's always a good start, and if you tab across to the arrangement view, what you've just played is now the structure of your song. So I'll probably try that a couple of different ways and see what I was happy with, maybe go away for a bit and come back to it and see if that sounds any good or not. And then I can start using that structure to build a song, whether it means re-recording the parts or voicing them differently, starting to layer them up. One thing I forgot to show just then is, especially with drum parts, you can see how a part you've already done would sound different with a different beat quite quickly. So let's try this. So there we got the same part with several different feels just by changing the beat. And that won't always work because obviously not everything matches up, but it's a good way of seeing how like a riff you've got feels with a different sort of drive behind it. And finally, where I go from there, what I'd probably do next is, if I was happy with that structure, the next thing I would do would probably be transitions. Obviously these parts come in and out quite harshly. Maybe look at some fade-ins or some transition material to make it a bit smoother. And just listening to the parts and adding bits that are needed. After that, it'll be probably tracking, probably recording those parts properly, learning them properly rather than just coming up with them on the fly. And then after that, we'll be mixing. Hopefully that's been useful. I really rate Ableton just for that reason. It just means I can be a bit more creative. So it's not just about sort of the mixing and the recording, it's about being creative and helping me come up with parts that I wouldn't be able to come up with just sat in this room, like messing about on my guitar for hours on end. Thanks.